Coming up on Network Africa. With the G20 summit over, President Cyril Ramaphosa vows to focus on sustainable development goals as South Africa assumes the presidency. Senegal's ruling PASTEF party confirmed winner of last Sunday's legislative polls. Plus. Prominent Ugandan opposition figure faces military court after Kenya expulsion. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. The summit of G20 countries is over as South Africa receives the baton of president of the group. After assuming the rotating presidency, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa vows to harness global collective energy, to confront challenges and exploit opportunities. President Ramaphosa received the G20 gavel from his outgoing Brazilian counterpart, Luiz Inácio da Silva, during the closing ceremony of the annual summit. Now, this makes South Africa the first African nation to preside over the G20.
South Africa firmly believes that civil society serves as a bridge between the G20 leaders and the people who have the greatest interest in the deliberations that we've been having here, the ordinary people of the world. We will continue as South Africa with this innovative platform for engagement during South Africa's presidency of the G20. This practice is very much in line with our traditions as South Africa to involve civil society formations in all matters of importance to the people of our country. South Africa will seek to harness global collective energy to confront the challenges that we all face as the world, but also to exploit various opportunities that abound. The G20 presidency theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. This hopefully will help us address the challenges that the world faces and exploit the myriad opportunities that are also there.
Well, the new G20 president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is also calling for stakeholders to be reasonable and level-headed over U.S. authorization of longer-range strikes by Ukraine and also Russia's response of updating its nuclear doctrine. He was speaking at a press briefing at the close of the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Under the updated Russian doctrine, an attack by a non-nuclear state with support of a nuclear state would be considered a joint attack on Russia.
Utilizing of nuclear, it's something that must be seen as calamitous for all of us in the world, and also the increased threat of utilizing long-range missiles and so forth. So it just means that this conflict is escalating to a very dangerous level, and it therefore requires cool heads, because we've been calling for the settlement of that conflict through negotiations, and we think negotiation is the only way out to resolve this conflict. And I've said to both presidents, both President Putin and Zelensky, that all conflicts end in either winning, defeat, or negotiation. And we've got to choose the best way out. And I've always said that the best way out is to negotiate. Well, sit around the table and find a solution that will accommodate the interests and the concerns that all parties have. And we as South Africa still hope and wish and want to work for attainment of peace in that area and also negotiations.
Well, joining us now is Professor Lekutu Pasa, Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Johannesburg. Thank you so much, Professor, for your time on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, as South Africa assumes the G20 chair in 2025, what do you think, are the main priorities for the country being in this position?
Well, this is a pivotal time for South Africa and I guess for South Africa's foreign policy because, as you correctly stated in your introductory video, this will be the first time that an African country will be assuming the reign of leadership as it presides over the G20. And this will be obviously very, very important and, of course, pivotal for South Africa's foreign policy. And I guess insofar as all things that have to do with foreign policy are concerned and the major policy considerations are concerned, I think the answer to your question really lies in the South African theme for the G20 summit, which it will be taking over on the 1st of December for 2025. And the theme is very clear. It's solidarity, equality, and I guess sustainability. Now, all of these are very much South Africa's own policy priorities, at least on the foreign front at the moment, given the fact that the South Africa and I guess Africa as a whole really, they do actually face quite a number of economic challenges that obviously relate to all these three themes that have been proposed by South Africa as it gears up for 2025 G20 summit. So things around climate change, food security, and of course industrialization and sustainability.
Well, picking out, from the theme, picking out equality, how can South Africa now balance its role as a representative of the African continent, while addressing global economic issues within the G20, issues that you have also, pointed out?
I think the issue of equality really does speak to what the current mantra seems to be, at least when it comes to foreign policy issues or economic issues across the world, really, and that is climate change and the just transition, which obviously has a direct impact on the economies of the world, not least global South economies and African economies. So when you put everything into context, you realize that Africa, it obviously contributes least, to global, emissions. But when it comes to actually bearing the brand of global warming, we seem to be the ones actually taking much of that brand. And I think the main issue here that obviously speaks to the issue of equality and sustainability is climate change. And I think South Africa right now is very much positioned as it's going to be hosting this conference next year, to really amplify the voice of Africa as a continent collectively speaking to one common message, and that is a message of climate change that is going to be to the beneficence of Africa and the economies of Africa. So the just transition here, South Africa really does have an opportune moment, to really amplify it as a main priority issue, given the fact that it does actually speak directly to the issues that South Africa seeks to raise, which is industrialization and of course sustainable economic development, all of which really speak to the issue of climate change. And I guess climate change currently, as it is being carried out, and all the mechanisms that have been put in place to try and actually mitigate it, have a direct impact on African economies. And I think this is a perfect time for South Africa to speak on behalf of Africa and actually talk about how climate change itself has to be carried out in a manner that is going to benefit the economies of Africa, not just South Africa, but the economies of Africa as a whole. So all these mechanisms that have been put in place, they should not just be for the beneficence of one country, it should be for the beneficence of the African continent. I think South Africa here has an opportunity to really amplify that message very clearly.
And do you foresee, any challenges for South Africa in leading the G20?
I beg your pardon? Sorry, I missed you there.
I'm asking, about challenges. Do you foresee any for the country, even as it leads G20?
Well, I guess the message that South Africa is going to really, send out through its thematic document of solidarity, equality, and sustainability, it really speaks directly to the issues that South Africa currently is actually faced with. So South Africa, as you all know, is the most unequal society in the world. And I guess this is a perfect time for South Africa to really get ideas from all over the world. I mean, the G20, we're talking 20 of the most industrialized and the most successful economies coming into South Africa, descending on the country, and actually coming to share ideas that will actually go on to shape the policy framework of the future. So the issues that are actually really amplified in a thematic document that South Africa is actually proposing to the G20 countries really speak directly to the issues that South Africa is experiencing on the home front, issues around inequality, which, like I said, South Africa is the most unequal in the world. Poverty, which is also a reality in South Africa, but also stagnant growth as well, which South Africa is currently experiencing. And it does actually speak to issues around power utility, power generation. And South Africa right now is actually caught between a rock and a hard place as to the extent to which it's going to really go with the fossil idea or the fossil fuel, idea, or is going to really go with the just transition. And if it goes with the just transition, how is it going to be actualized? How is it going to be carried out? And to what extent will it be to the benefit of South Africa going forward?
All right, then. Thank you so much, Professor Lekutu Pasa, Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Johannesburg. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, here in West Africa, provisional results garnered so far has confirmed Senegal's ruling Pastef party's win in a decisive victory in Sunday's snap legislative elections. Well, the party came first in 40 out of 46 departments and in 7 of the 8 diaspora constituency. Also, President Bassirou Faye's party extended its reach, winning votes in areas of the country that are seen as strongholds of former President Macky Sall. Also, politics in Uganda, a prominent opposition figure, Kizza Besigye, has appeared before a military court in the capital, Kampala, on the charges of illegal possession of arms and negotiating to buy arms abroad. Mr. Besigye appeared along with his co-accused opposition politician, Obedi Lutale. Both men have denied the charges. Well, his appearance comes after his wife had said he was kidnapped in neighboring Kenya last Saturday and sent back home, where he was being held in a military jail. Winnie Byanyima posted on social media that her 68-year-old husband had been seized in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, during a book launch event, and she demanded the Ugandan government free him. And as the conclusion of the G20 summit in Rio sent mixed signals to negotiators in Baku, Azerbaijan, Nigerian Minister of Environment, Balarabe Lawal, has told delegates of the UN Climate Conference that the world must act now. Well, the Nigeria delegate also marked Nigeria Day at the conference, a day set aside for the civil society organizations and governments at various levels to discuss collaboration to achieve success at the conference.
You have the floor.
Nigeria kicked off the day with the Minister of Environment telling world leaders that it's time to move from rhetoric to action.
Mr. President.
He therefore advocated for the means of implementation to achieve global goals on adaptation.
Nigeria aligns with the rest of Africa in demanding greater, easier access to international finance, including grant and concessional loans to support mitigation and adaptation efforts. We stress the need to significantly scale up adaptation finance to enable developing countries to accelerate adaptation and build resilience. We also urge for accelerated effort to operationalize the loss and damage fund to mitigate the damaging impact of climate change globally.
Nigeria may be blessed. He then moved on to the Nigerian pavilion, where he was joined by the Minister of Power, the Minister of Regional Development, and the Minister of Women Affairs to host Nigerian delegates for the Nigerian Day. But he did not shy away from correcting some media reports on the number of delegates in Baku. Many have quoted the provisional figure of registered participants from Nigeria listed by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This list has President Tinubu as a participant in Baku. Though he registered, he did not attend.
From our assessment, the numbers that came as delegates are 157. The numbers that came on their own are 152.
Honorable Ministers.
The Minister of Environment later joined his counterparts from Sierra Leone, the Gambia, and Angola to detail African ministers' COP29 climate finance asks.
I think what Africa now wants, what our countries are expecting, is that those commitments must now be turned into actions, and we want to see finances that will go towards saving our countries, that will go towards the actual fight against climate change, so that we don't continue using our limited resources from developing our countries to fighting climate change.
Amid accusations and counter-accusations on who is blocking progress here in Baku, as the talks hit crunch time, African ministers have made it clear that a deal on climate finance must be agreed without compromise to the needs of Africa and other developing countries. From the Olympic Stadium, the venue of COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, Ayola Kasim, Channels Television News.
Welcome back to the program. The Ghanaian government has handed over a building belonging to the Nigerian High Commission in Accra, Ghana. The building in question had been demolished by armed men who stormed the compound and destroyed buildings under construction back in 2020. President Akufo-Addo had ordered an investigation, while the Ghanaian government promised to reconstruct the block of 4-bedroom flats. It was formally handed over to the Nigerian government today, and the Ghanaian Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the move is seen as commendable and a symbol of Ghana's commitment at strengthening ties between both countries. The Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has confirmed the return of the building and says the ministry applauds the gesture and affirms that the reconstruction of the building embodies the spirit of cooperation and mutual respect that defines the relationship between Ghana and its sister nation, Nigeria. Today, November 20, is World Children's Day, a global day of action for children by the United Nations Children Agency, UNICEF. It commemorates the anniversary of the UN General Assembly's adoption of the Declaration and Convention of Children's Rights on November 20, 1959 and 1989, respectively. Well, consequently, the UN celebrates World Children's Day and strives to raise awareness about issues as education inequity, child labor, ending violence against children, and access to health care. In doing this, the UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed recently called on the world to be courageous in fulfilling the promise of ending violence against children by 2030.
I'll never forget the 15 young girls from Sudan that I met in August this year, who have lived through and continue to try to survive the horrors and the lasting trauma of violence and rape in their country. I was also inspired by their courage, their conviction as they set about rebuilding their lives, ready to take on their futures. It is time we emulate that courage and we fulfill the promise that we've made to end violence against children by 2030. It's the very least that we can do to help heal their egregious wounds.
Well, let's speak now to Lola Alonge. She's a child rights advocate and she joined us in Lagos. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me today.
In Nigeria, what progress, would you say we have made towards the goal of making a good future for children since 1989?
Yeah, I'm happy there's a day set aside like this World Children's Day. And of course, we have the National Children's Day, which we normally celebrate in Nigeria, and I think May 27th. How far have we fared? I think I normally feel a little bit bad and sad whenever we're talking about children and the state of children, especially in Nigeria. We have the Child Rights Act, which has been domesticated in about 34 states out of 36 states. I think that is progress, and that is good news. We have states like Zamfara and Kano are yet to domesticate the Child Rights Act. And I think this is a wake-up call for them. So please join others and let us know we have laws in place to protect our children. But in spite of all that, I think it's just all talk. This is the time for action. Today is World Children's Day, and of course, we normally celebrate our Children's Day nationally as well. But when we look at issues like education, issues like health, violence against children, I think we are yet to really protect our children. Let's start with education, for example. The statistics we have now shows that about 18.5 million children are out of school. 60% of them are girls. And I'm also aware that 15% of out-of-school children globally are in Nigeria, which means 34 states have laws in place, but they are not enforcing it in the area of the right to education. So we need to look at how government can show more commitment, states, even at the local level, community leaders, everyone come on board, including non-governmental organizations, and see how we can enforce the laws. Now we have laws, but is there any action? No. It's really sad, because when children are supposed to be in school, we're talking about cases like either child marriage, or they're on the street walking, or they're sleeping under the bridge, or they are being with child labor, which means we have not fared well in the area of education. Then talking about violence against children as well, I also feel very sad when I see cases of abuse. There was a case of abuse that I experienced and saw the effect yesterday. A mother got annoyed and poured hot water on her child, and it was like a terrible thing. And I think we need to do a lot more. Then looking at cases like health, right to health again. Every child has a right to good health, starting with nutrition. The situation in the country is not even the best now. The purchasing power is very low, and the children are affected mostly, which means there's need for more support. Then we look at cases like abuse, cases like not having the right to do what they want to do or go to school and things like that. So I think we've not done too well in Nigeria.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Lola Alonge, child rights advocate. Thank you for your time on Network Africa.
Thank you.
And finally, on the program, Nigerian beauty queen Chidinma Adetshina has credited the resolute Nigerian spirit as the key to her success at the 73rd edition of the Miss Universe 2024 beauty pageant in Mexico. Chidinma, who emerged as the first runner-up and earned the Miss Universe Africa and Oceania title, told Channels Television that despite the many hiccups on the way, she was relentless and determined.
Chidinma Adetshina's 4 months roller coaster journey to the prestigious Miss Universe ended with a runner-up crown and a title that reads Miss Universe Africa and Oceania. Even though she narrowly missed the main crown, the 23-year-old still feels fulfilled.
It was a really fulfilling experience for me. I think I exceeded my expectations, and I'm really proud of myself. Even though I didn't come out as the winner, I still came up with 2 titles, and I'm really proud of myself.
The xenophobic attack from South Africa, a country she had called home for many years, persisted until the final moment. She was trolled online, petitions were written against her, and the government of South Africa cancelled her papers and those of her mother. She, however, believed she pulled through all the attacks with the help of a newly found Nigerian spirit.
For me, I just think it was even more of that never give up spirit, because I got to understand that that is how us as Nigerians, we just don't give up. And, you know, there were so many times where I was like, I can't do it anymore. And they were like, that's not how a Nigerian works. Like, wherever we go, we always make sure we make it.
Now she's focusing on just 2 things, forgiveness and healing.
I don't think I've healed from it, but I think I've forgiven the whole situation and I've acknowledged it. So I think now, moving forward, it's all about healing. It's all about tapping into those emotions, because there are certain things that I also can't say, because obviously everybody is watching and listening to what I say. But there are things that I have within my heart, because I am only human at the end of the day.
This is perhaps a fairy tale ending to a rough ride to glory for Chidinma. It is also, however, just a chapter in her story. How the full story will go now remains to be seen.
Congratulations again to Chidinma. And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.